No, I'm kidding, dude.
No. I want to take something down.
Don't change your background. Oh my goodness, and we're live, guys. Sorry, for everyone just joining, I just
No, we're good.
Changing the background, I guess. Okay.
I love how we start these. We always start these with like the most random conversation, and then like all people just start joining from like all over and start commenting on our random conversation.
Yeah, it's like it's not a cold start. It's always like rolling in with something.
Rolling in, yeah. No, precisely.
Yeah. How did everyone manage to connect to their accounts? Sorry.
Yeah,
the streaming thing. Did you guys do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm streaming.
Douglas, did you manage to do it? Connect your LinkedIn.
Yes, I did. I already did that. Yes.
Okay, so you're live streaming, and same with you, Dom.
What is that? Sorry.
Did you connect your LinkedIn to?
I have. Yeah. Seemed to work.
Beautiful.
I don't know. There's like a tick in the top right there saying something. LinkedIn
Daniel, go like LinkedIn search everyone and let us know, please.
And can you change my titling? Who puts this titling up?
You can change it if you just click
Really?
the 3 little dots on your picture on the bottom left there. I just did mine.
There we go.
On the bottom there.
Lisa, you're at a tech company. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. At a tech company. At a tech company. Edit name and headline. Nice.
Okay, so as everyone's joining, just hop in the chat and in the comments and just say hello, please, and let us know where you're calling from, or where you're tuning in from. And if you're running a company, actually, let's add a bit more to that. So if you're viewing this, hop in the chat, tell us your name, where you're calling from, and then share with us whether you have, if you have a company, whether you're bootstrapping it or whether you raise capital, just so we can do a vibe check and see who's tuning in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. You were saying
Dom,
something before.
I was asking, Dom, are you nervous?
Extremely. Just as I press mute instead of unmute.
Are you nervous? Have you done any of these before?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I spend my life in front of this screen and this camera. So, yeah, no, not nervous, but it's hard. Like, it's always good to every kind of event, every webinar has its own flavor. Interesting to see what people ask.
Yeah.
I got a stupid question. But so the comments are coming through on LinkedIn. Is that how this thing works?
Yeah, I think it's like connecting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So they'll come through. They'll also come through the comment section.
Yeah. Are you on because Stella has 4 creators, and we'll definitely get into that. But do you create content yourself?
No, I don't. But I write. I write on my Medium, but not much. I try to write one post annually. So
one annually.
It's at least consistent.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Is it always on the 1st of January, by the way?
I mean, I try to switch it up. So this year, I think I did something in February. So yeah, I tried.
Nice. That's awesome. What's it usually about? Is it business or artistic or?
Oh no, it's just about my life.
Dope.
So it's awesome. It's like whatever I'm going through. At some point, I had a period where I was just complaining about different things, but I was like, let's just stop that. Let's stop complaining. And now it's just about different things, whatever I'm going through, well, whatever is happening in my life at that particular point in time. So yeah, that's it.
Nice. That's awesome.
Nice.
We'll start in a few minutes, but good segue. Does anyone here journal or does anyone here keep track of what's going on through writing?
So I don't journal. Well, I do, but I sketch. So I don't know if you know this, because we've known each other for a while. So I have a sketchbook. It's next to me, because it helps organize my thoughts. So I sketch.
Oh, wow.
like while, and this is like helps me like organize my thoughts, like as
It's
I'm
blood. Oh yeah. It
bring it
looks like it's
closer.
They look really
So-
good.
Very cool.
Damn, nice.
So that's kind of how I order my thoughts. So I think in pictures. So to be able to like get out whatever's in, like I sketch. So after this, actually, I'm going to my art class. I go to art classes once a week.
Dope. That is super.
There's a thing called creative rest. Did you know that there are 7 different types of rest? And there's a thing called creative rest.
Wow.
I do creative rest.
We should, next webinar's about that.
There's a lot to be said for that. I think then you, in a different state of mind, you're not completely focusing on a particular problem.
Yeah.
When you in the shower, distracted, or sketching, or like I play guitar, that your subconscious is actually figuring things out in the background, and it's going through scenarios, and it's playing out different millions of scenarios quickly, and then you have that eureka moment when your brain has gone, connect these 2 problems together, or this problem with a solution, and then you get that eureka moment. Yeah. So it's so important to have those moments in the day and regularly planned in so that you don't burn out your creative capabilities. Like if you're just staring at the problems continuously, you're not going to find enough free space for your brain to try all those different scenarios that could work. And that's actually a lot of the inspiration, really comes from.
There's like active thinking and like passive thinking. What's it called? It's like it's in that thinking fast and slow.
Yeah, thinking fast and slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like type 1, type 2, all those things. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And even part of my feeling at Brookwood Labs, I'm trying to like build it from when I have more employees. But you've got to actually, I think, build it into your company's way of working. That I know we talk about flow time, but it almost always gets deleted by urgent, important things. But you got to find a way to protect employees' sort of creative time and not actually spend 10 hours a day grinding. You've probably got to spend 5 hours a day grinding, maybe, and then another 2 or 3 hours a day giving yourself time to think. That's how you get real productivity out.
And I think there's only like 4 hours of really high quality execution in a day max, and then you're out of flow state.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some really cool audience members joining us. So let me just read out who is here. We have Mark here. We have Onyekachi from Nigeria. I don't know, I can't read the name, but in Denmark, normally in Nairobi. Ryan from South Africa, bootstrapped a business, but had to close it down due to partner complications. Christine from Joburg, who has raised capital. Dario from Mozambique. Laura from Uza Marketplace in Kigali, bootstrapping, may consider raising. Somto Chukwu from Lagos, no company, but wants to change that. Someone from London who bootstrapped their business. Someone from Nairobi with a startup in the UK raising capital and has raised a successful angel. Going to do seed soon. And then, someone joining from Lagos, Patricia. Cool. So keep the comments coming. If you're viewing, punch your sort of name in there. It really helps to know like how many people in each camp are here. Let's dive in. Let's dive into the session. So here's how it's going to go. Basically, we'll do a quick round of intros. It's going to be moderated by Lisa and I, and we're going to be hearing from Douglas and from Dom about their journey building their product and sort of how they ended up bootstrapping / raising. And then we're going to dive into like, what do each of those things mean and what are the sort of pros and cons of both. And then the second half of this will be about your questions around bootstrapping and raising capital. All right. I'll start. I'm Caleb. I'm the CEO of Tech Safari, which is a media company talking about tech in Africa and changing the African narrative. We're really here to figure out like what are the most valuable things for our ecosystem to know about and to be talking about publicly. And we do that through content. We do it through webinars like these. I really want to support our ecosystem to thrive. So that's why we do sessions like these with our incredible partners at Raise. And it's a nice segue, Lisa, for you to give a quick intro.
Thanks. That's very sweet of you. Thanks, Caleb. I'm Lisa Illingworth. I'm the managing director at Raise. I am a former founder myself, so I have started and founded businesses, and then I joined Raise now almost 2 years ago to help them as their commercial director, and I've moved into the managing director role at the beginning of December. And Raise exists to help African founders manage and sustainably look after their equity across Africa. So we work specifically with founders from Nigeria, from Kenya, and from South Africa, making sure that you look after your house and you keep it in order as you grow your businesses, and that your equity doesn't become a stumbling block for growth. And I will then segue to Dom, because Dom and I met, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, on an accelerator program where one of the businesses that I had started was on that accelerator program, and we were on it together. And I was this irreverent, cheeky new founder in the room, and Dom was giving me a run for my money. But one of the founders that I respect in that 10X cohort quite a bit, and we share the same business coach.
Oh. So I was the CEO of Anoxico, and it's the company we founded out of that. Please excuse my voice; it's a little bit affected by a cold. But the other company was called Trade Shield. It's done really well. A huge amount of learning experience there on how to build a new product inside another business. We did try some of the bootstrapping techniques, so huge things there. But that was a venture capital funded, and also we had funding as well from a DFI, the German Development Bank. So also some interesting experience in dealing with that sort of source of funding. But today I've started another business called Joyforge Labs. Does two things. It's a venture studio building new MVPs, focusing on the US market. And the other side of it is helping entrepreneurs to figure out their path into the US as well. So, I've got some experience there that I'm lending a hand to other founders and other builders. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. Thanks, Dom. And Douglas, over to you.
Okay. I'm Douglas Kenderson. I'm the founder of Seller. I think my position on this webinar is going to be a little interesting because all of my previous employers have been VC-backed, heavily VC-backed companies. Worked at Paystack, Flutterwave, and in a robo-advisory firm in the UAE, and like a plaid-like company in like the UAE too. I'm sorry, I also kind of have a cough today. It's interesting that I think with all of that wealth of experience, when I wanted to build, I kind of just opted for bootstrapping. And maybe we'll talk about why. And Seller is an online store builder for creators in Africa. Today we have over like 150K users, and we've been doing this since like 2016. A lot of the growth came from 2020, and excited to talk about this with you guys today.
So cool. Yeah, so as you can tell, we have a Bootstrap founder, Douglas, here, and then we have a founder that's raised capital, Dom, here. Douglas, while we're with you, I mean, it sounds like you've been working on Seller for a while. 2016, that's like 8 years, long time. I'm really keen, like, can you tell us a bit more about like how you started Seller, how you built the product, and like, yeah, like the journey, what's the journey been like so far in building Seller?
So I think it was, if I'm being very honest, it didn't start out very intentional. Like, oh, I'm trying to build like X, Y, Z. So at the time I worked at Paystack in 2016, and sort of seen a lot of requests of people that wanted to like build digital products, sell digital products, but they had to like make a website, also set up like a registered business to like sell online. And at the time, we just wanted to make like a simple platform for people to sell anything online. And so that was how we decided to build an MVP at the time. And I think we built one in like 3 weeks, launched it. We sort of had a lot of friends use it. Friends from like uni use it because we just graduated from school then. And from 2016 till I only quit my full-time jobs like full-time job in like by January 2021. So from 2016 to like 2020, so I think by 2020 I was sort of like, oh, I've had this for like roughly 3 years now. It's time to put in some like intentional work. If it works, we'll see. If it doesn't work, I can finally park it and do other things, because I had another like project I wanted to work on. So by the beginning of 2020, I was like, so I think at the time I'd sort of like amassed like, so I'd always been a software engineer. But in 2019, and I think, 2019 roughly, I started working at this firm in the UAE, but I worked very closely with the marketing team. And I think I've always been very privileged to work very closely with the founders, even though I've been an engineer or just across different functions. And so I kind of had this like little knowledge about marketing, and I was like, I'm going to try to be a little more intentional about like marketing in 2020. If this works, good. If not, I really want to work on like the other project that I had. So try to set up like some little processes, try to be a little more intentional. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And by 2020, we sort of saw more revenue than we've seen in the last like 3 years combined. And so I think by that time I was like, I want to try. Interestingly, by the end of 2020, I said, I want to raise money. And I think I spoke to a friend, I made a deck. I spoke to one of my employers that knew I wanted to like go full time, and like he helped me like do some things, but then like laziness just came and I never went ahead with the process of raising money. But that's sort of, and I think so by 2021 I was like, I'm ready to quit, and that was when I only started working on Seller full time. Yeah.
Wow. So there's a few things in that I want to like unpack a bit, because you kind of brushed off a couple things that most founders I think would go raise money for. So one was like you built an MVP in 3 weeks. Like I'm really curious to know how you built that and like how much time it took, if it costs a lot of money. And then the marketing thing as well, the thing that you just tested out. Like how did you do that? And then like B, how did you fund that? Was it expensive, or did you just find like scrappy ways to do it like for a cheap price?
So,
I guess.
I'm going to circle back to that, but I think I just want to make a comment. So I think a question that people always ask me is, how come you were able to like keep doing Seller for like so long without like noticeable like growth or equity, growth or money or anything? And to that I say, it cost me nothing. Like it didn't cost me much. So what that means is, at the time we started Seller, I had co-founders, and so we were all engineers. So that sort of helped. We had a friend of ours was a designer, so they helped make a design. And then I'm an engineer, we're all an engineer. And I think that's also what really helped me over the first like 3 or 4 years, because from 2016 to like roughly 2019, I was iterating the product with like customer feedback. I was the one texting people on Instagram, reaching out to customers, sending cold DMs. And I was iterating because I enjoyed the process of like building. It was fun for me. That was my early 20s. It was fun to do all that work then. And so when it comes to building, we build that ourselves. Sort of solo beauty for like the longest time till like 2020. I think I only hired, I'm really sorry. I think I only hired my first set of engineers in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. So all the time, I think aside like the first 1 or 2 years, I was just solo building.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, when it comes to like marketing, I think interestingly, I had this really weird paranoia with spending money on ads if the product wasn't ready. So I ended up not really doing ads till almost, I think, middle of 2021. That was like when the first set of ads came. So before that, it was a bunch of figuring out like all the zero cost like strategies we could do. And what that meant was we were trying to build our social media following. We were also doing a lot of collaborations and webinars to drive traffic and grow our audience. And that's really what a lot of the growth looked like before. And I think even when we started doing ads at that point in time, the business was generating, because I think we became profitable by almost, I think, end of 2021, early 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And by that time, the business was like covering the cost, and that was helpful. But all through that time, it really didn't cost me anything. I was maybe like a domain name I purchased. We were on Amazon ad credits for like the longest time. And there's really just nothing more to spend on.
Yeah, I feel that. I think like Lisa and I could probably both relate as folks who have like bootstrapped our latest companies, like Texify. There's obviously things to pay for, but it's like, may as well just do everything yourself, and save the funds where you can. That's really cool. Thanks for that background. I'm curious. I want to keep going, but I do want to hear from Dom and hear about his journey, and then we can dive into the general questions for the two of you. So Dom, tell us about, you're the founder at JoyForge, but previously you have raised money for your past companies. Tell us a bit about those companies, and how you went into building those products.
Sure. I mean, I've started lots of business ideas that have failed. My first proper business that I left my corporate job for, I funded with the wife's money. She was the one who worked, so not really bootstrapping. And I tried to get funding for that business, and
we call that heel strapping.
Is that heel strapping? That it has big costs. I can tell you that it's not a simple thing to do. You pay for it in many ways. Because that business didn't work out, and partially because, first time founder, was building something that there wasn't really a need for. I thought it was a great idea, but it really wasn't. But I wasn't listening to the potential investors that I was pitching to, were asking me questions for which I didn't have a good answer to, and which were fatal for that business. And I think that's where bootstrapping can be tricky, especially if you're early on, a first-time founder. There is a lot of value in having experienced people around to help you identify the flaws in your business model and which assumptions are, if they don't work out, are going to mean death to your business. And I think that you could spend years bootstrapping something that should have been killed within 3 to 6 months. That's what I should have done. I then joined this business in Oxico, and I eventually became CEO. And while in that process, we raised from a DFI, the German Development Bank. That was quite interesting because they're not that interested in the financials of the business. They didn't mind that we were losing money, didn't mind that we didn't have product market fit. They were more interested in the impact, and that business did have good impact. And so we got money, in fact, and then they wanted to give us more, and we had to find projects to do. So that was an environment in which there was little discipline around, again, the business model, around getting profitability, but then being given money to go and spend on things which, to be fair, we probably shouldn't have done, or we should have done for far less money. And that would have been a point in time where bootstrapping would have brought the benefits that bootstrapping does, which is you only focus on the things which are going to absolutely necessarily produce revenue. Then I moved to a new phase. We founded a new company that's within an Oxico called TradeShield. We raised money from that from a standard VC in South Africa, from Vumela. Quite a tough process. We did raise decent money for it. And that, I think was a good outcome because it was good for that business. That business has done well. It's grown. We're able to sustain, a good team to build out that product. But we got the money probably even there a little bit early. We weren't quite yet at a product market fit, and it could have gone wrong. Had I not had the experiences, I think, in those previous years of taking money, plowing it into software, only to find that, after you've been building something for 12 months, that customers were not really that excited. With TradeShield, we started that, on an Excel spreadsheet, and customers wanted it from day one, which was a huge eye-opener for me. And I think that's where, if you can achieve that first before taking any VC money, clearly that is the better path to go. But I think we'll get into some of these details. But that I think was, so I've had these experiences along the way where I've used money poorly, had poor outcomes. I've used the bootstrapping techniques and then got some VC funding, which has worked out well. But I still think that most founders start thinking about the funding way too soon and use it for the wrong reasons. You shouldn't be using investors' money to discover, to do the exploration, to figure out the product market fit. You're giving up way too much. You're going to end up in most cases, losing most of your business, most of your equity. If you use it for the right reasons for scaling, yes. But as all of us know, we all want to be at the point of scaling sometimes a couple of years before we actually really are there. And adding money to that picture, it's very, very tricky and pretty dangerous. So yeah, that's a little bit my experience of those. At the right time, the right approach.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. This is funny because we have two people who are saying like very similar things around bootstrapping being positive. So maybe just to flip the script a bit, yeah. Can I do this? Like, what would the other side of this argument be then around like actually raising money for discovery when you don't have a product and you don't know if it can scale? Like, why do you think that might be the case? Yeah, go, Lisa.
So I think there is merit to raising. I think we discussed this in one of our other webinars, but money is like a microwave to a problem. Okay, so if you want to know if something's going to work quickly, you add money to it. If you want to microwave your food or you want to pop the popcorn faster, add a microwave and it will pop, right? So money amplifies whatever's there. So I think if you want to know if an idea works quickly, you want to stress test it quickly, add money to it. And you'll know very quickly whether it works or not. So if there is this time factor that's at play, money, other people's money, you call it OPM, VC capital or other capital will amplify that, right? Is it the best way for a person to learn lessons for themselves? Dom and I and Douglas will argue otherwise. But is it the best way to test an idea and to test it fast? Yes.
There is a question. Is that true for South African money or African money? Or is it more true for larger funds where I think they have this 1 in 100, they can take a 1 in 100 bet. It's a lot more difficult, I found, to get the $100,000, $200,000 that you might need to quickly accelerate something. There's not that much money available for that scale of tests.
But do you need to test it? I mean, that's assuming that your US market is that much larger. So you need that much more money to test it, right? So if you're taking something to market, we've got smaller markets here, you wanting to test it at a smaller scale, put money behind it, taste it, and let's see if it's actually got any legs behind it. I've stress tested a team, putting money behind a team and put money into, or taken money, or almost taken money for a business that eventually failed because of the money. And it was because people's behavior changes when money arrives on the table. So, stress testing a product and stress testing a team, money changes behavior. And people will show up in their truest form when you put money down. So there's not just the business of a product, there's also the business of people. And you can stress test those things very quickly with money.
I want to get Douglas's. I have a point to add to that, Lisa, but I want Douglas's perspective on this. What do you think around like raising money and its merits, especially as someone who's been at companies which have started off from raising? What's your perspective?
So, I mean, interestingly, I am very pro. I mean, I think I'm pro raising. I think one of literally my first experience with running a company, my first job was with Paystack. And when I think of Paystack a lot, I think of the importance of the money that they raised. I think at the time, and it really just depends on the market and the products and the people and everything, but at the time they were coming into a market where InterSwitch dominated, even though not so well. And there were so many moving parts for them to move that money helped make work. Whether it's hiring the best engineers to do the best kind of work, to build the best kind of product. I think they definitely built an MVP, and that was good. But then also all the efforts to grow the community, all the efforts to I don't know. I mean, the marketing in at the beginning wasn't that intense, but like when I say marketing, I mean like maybe like social media ads and everything. But there was definitely a lot of effort like B2B marketing, and there was also a lot of effort in purchasing licenses and so many things. And all these things really, really matter. And you kind of cannot. In some certain industries, it's going to be very. I think I would say it's very hard to bootstrap your way to a point where you can. I feel like for me, I could do what I could do. Because the kind of market I was trying to reach. I mean, and also I took so much time. Um, I took like maybe 4 or 5 years, but that's also just because I was working and I was doing this as part time. But also like there are some things that need to be done and done quickly. Like a lot of like the work that Paystack and Flutterwave did at the time was a function of building like a whole new system for people to collect payments, and that work needed to be done fast. I believe, or I would argue that I think it needed to be done fast and done well, and money really just helps do that very well. They're just I think I liked when Don said something about like they're just some cases that you probably should not be like raising money to go like test and play around. You should have you should have something and your thing together before you go getting some extra money. But yeah.
I like that.
Maybe I can follow up. Delegas, was the Paystack challenge? Because I think it's about uncertainty at the end of the day. Like the money should be helping you to learn what assumptions are not working. So to run these tests, to run these hypotheses, that's very much the way I think about it. And maybe in the case of Paystack, the problem of collecting money and solving this payment problem is quite well understood. It was a question of how to do it better. And Paystack was getting the money to implement a better solution, but the problem space is very straightforward, very easy to tell a client, okay, well, we're going to help you get the money from here to here, and this is pretty much going to be the cost. The challenge is for those very thin margins, can you build a big business that's scalable? And therefore, you hire engineers and so forth. I think a lot of founders, and I'm in that camp, have been getting money without the problem space being really well understood. You're building something new for a newish problem, and it's not very clear actually even what the customer really wants at the end of the day. And so you are putting money into tech and into products that then later on need to be changed completely. It didn't really matter on day one that they were inefficient. It's that you weren't even solving the problem that they really wanted solved in a way that they wanted solved. And I've come across now much easier ways, like literally Excel sheet. Like if I give you this output, will you be happy? and many will say to you, no, I'm not interested in that output, or that's not valuable for me. Great. Then you can cross off that thing. Don't go and build the whole tech stack to go and output that data set. So you save yourself a huge amount of time. And that's where I think that it's very easy to get money. Well, sometimes to get money for something where your problem is not well understood. You end up experimenting with that money, and then you don't ever make it out of this loop. You got to be careful that, what are you spending the money for? I think in Paystack's case, sounds to me like, and I'm not sure, it was more about making sure that the business could be profitable, making sure that we can get those margins. So customer acquisition cost is a challenge, and then also obviously your tech stack needs to be able to produce the output for the clients within that very thin margin at scale. And that's okay. There's no halfway to do that. I would say you can't go and build an Excel sheet in the background with some macros.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
that can't be done that way.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you're also saying there was just clarity on the work to be done and how to get. I mean, the how-to obviously would change, and obviously life will teach you a lot of how-tos you didn't plan. But there was also like this is how we're definitely doing it to be better than all that exists. Interestingly, I want to say something. So while we launched this in 2016, and we're very clear that we wanted to make a thing for people to sell digital products like ebooks and courses, there was this friend of mine that we pitched. There was this VC guy that we pitched to, and then he was like, this is 2017. And I think we'd pitched to him, and then he was like, nobody's buying ebooks right now. Nobody's buying content. Nobody's buying courses. And he was right. He was actually right. At the time, nobody was buying ebooks. Nobody was paying for content in Nigeria at the time. And he was like, go focus on building like a Shopify, which is more tailored to physical products. And we didn't listen to him, or I didn't listen to him. And I knew this is not what we wanted to do. And fast forward to 3 years later, we're doing something that's really impactful and a lot of people really appreciate. And that's also something that is very hard to tell, because I think you talked about like just bootstrapping in silence and when you should end in 3 to 6 months, but bootstrapping lets you just do it forever. And I guess sometimes there are merits, and then sometimes it will just like slap you in the face.
Guys, this is really, really like just rich. I guess like I wanted to put out one point, and then I have a couple more questions for you guys, and then we have to get to audience questions. So to our audience tuning in, if you have questions, pop them in the chat, and we will go through them in a couple of minutes. I think one of the ideas that we went through yesterday, like we had a pre-discussion, and it was that like having to put together your deck and sort of present it to someone else, right? Like, not just building internally in a silo, but actually presenting it to someone else can be a really big advantage. Have you guys found that to be helpful in building your products and sort of scaling? And I know also even you, Douglas, like you pitched Seller at one point to an investor. Like, was that a valuable experience to you? And do you think that founders or people who want to be founders should go through that process, whether or not they plan to raise or bootstrap?
I don't have nice things to say about pitching, because I think on a personal level, I don't like groveling. And like pitching for money is groveling at the worst, at the very like worst form. And I think there's nothing that as annoying as, okay, so I would say at the time I made a deck, and I think, so in 2020 when I decided, okay, this is going well, I want to like take this forward, and I reached out to some friends. I made a deck, and I think it just seemed like everybody had just reminded me that, oh, this is going to be a process of like going from dot, it's the full-time job. And I think I might have spoken to like one person, and that was still just not that pleasant. And I was just like, I'm not doing this right now. But fast forward, actually, this is even a more annoying situation, because somebody had emailed me saying, hey, this company is looking to fund some startups right now. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not really raising money. I'm fine, thank you. This is last year, by the way. This is last year. We're doing well, pretty well. I was like, oh, I'm not really looking to raise money right now. I'm pretty fine. Thank you. And he was like, but it's fine. You could just do it for like an intro. So mind you, I thought I was, and then I think we scheduled the thing. I thought I was just going to like, oh, talk about like Seller to like this. And then I go for the meeting, and they're like couple 4 or 5 people there. They're like, oh, do the presentation to pitch. I'm like, this is not even what I thought this was going to be. But you know what? I will go. And then I finish my pitch. And then they're asking me all the questions that do not even relate to what I'm saying. They don't have any understanding of like the industry and the thing. And it just reminded me, this is why I never wanted to do this, because you people will try me. You people giving money will try me. But I mean, so pitching with me, it's nice to make a deck. But I guess if you have like if you have a clear idea of the people that, the product you're trying to build and the people you're trying to serve, I guess just do that if you can. For me, I would do that. Yeah.
Love that. Lisa,
I've got a question for you, Caleb, because Caleb runs a fund, right? If you didn't know.
Okay.
So Caleb sits on the other side of the table in this conversation. Caleb, like when a founder comes to you with a pitch, when they bring their business to you, like do you see them as like groveling? Do you see them as partnering? What is, from your side of the table, like what is your reasoning to get behind a business? I mean, apart from the fact that you're going to make money out of it.
Yeah.
It's a business, right? A fund is a business, must make money. Like what is your take on this, sitting on the other side of the table?
Yeah, I would say like that's a really good question. I would say like the best founders don't need me, and I think the best founders generally don't need VC, or at least they don't seem like it. And so I know this from like both the investor perspective. The founders we've invested in have usually been fairly successful at raising, or just deciding not to raise and succeeding. And that's because they're solid businesses. And so it's interesting because they wouldn't bootstrap because they've raised previously in most cases, but if they wanted to, they could decide to not raise again. And I think that there's like probably a bigger problem here, which is like companies start by raising and they expect to continue by raising, thinking that's a solid business model.
Right.
But actually that's just what the startup ecosystem has looked like and shown us. So is that, I would say the other thing is, again, back to the point of like, the best founders do not grovel. Like I think I've been on the other side as a founder or like founding team while we've gone to raise money at entry level. And like the way that happens is it's not like, it's very much like, this is what we're doing. You're in or you're out. We don't need this per se. And I think that has been the most powerful approach I've seen to fundraising. Obviously it is a partnership, but it's not like there's no sense of like, we need this.
So it's raising when you don't need it. That's probably what you're saying here.
Like you don't need it. Or making it seem like you don't need it.
That's the difference, right? Yeah.
The most valuable for me in the fundraising experience has been just completing the deck in a sense. Like, I don't know if most people know about the Sequoia pitch deck, those things are built in such a way, it's very simple, but it's actually very hard if you can't describe what you do in one sentence and you can't describe your value propositions in a way that a non-expert can know, and link that then through to your competitive advantage, and then link that through to your key metrics, and then show what your traction is on that. If you don't have like a straight line, I found that's telling you as a founder where there's squiggles and where there's gaps, that's your problem. And when you're pitching to other people and you can't speak about those things very simply and very easily and with confidence, that's what's going to fail in your business most likely. So I think that it's that presentation, taking away from your jargon and your Kool-Aid and all of your like great vision and like all the cool ambitious stuff and so forth, and then just making it very simple in that deck for normal people to understand. Very hard process, but so good for the discipline for you to make sure that you're not fooling yourself. So even now, while I'm in my JoyForge labs, whenever I work on a new business idea, I go through the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas, and I basically have to build myself my own pitch deck. And I've learned now, I'm bullshitting myself here. I know this is not really true, and I don't really know what this part means. And it's an important part of the chain. And if I'm not getting all of it right, I've got a problem. And I think that's what investors are good at picking up. They're going, look, man, I see 100 pitches and I know what good looks like. And I know what you're telling me there sounds complicated, confusing, and that's messy. And I think that's the best value that a founder gets from the pitching process, is that external confirmation that this is where you're bullshitting yourself. Go and work on that. And if people are willing to put funds in, they will often also say like, okay, cool, I'm going to give you money, but this is where my worries are in your process. Great. That can be very valuable. But don't hear what I'm not saying is that I don't think investors have any special knowledge that can help your business. I haven't come across
God, they do not. Like I'm just saying, the amount of
generic stuff
that have started businesses, like very few, there are unicorns if you find them. And talk about searching for unicorns, those are the unicorns you should be looking for.
And that's a mistake I've read. I expected investors to be able to like know stuff, and the feedback that were giving me on my pitch deck was like very useful. No, it's not. They don't know anything in particular. They know the generic, they know the benchmarks, they know I've got a feeling here is something not great about your business.
Douglas's face is priceless.
No. I was saying that I like the phrase, I have a feeling, because it's really just a feeling. It's really just a feeling they have.
I disagree with the idea that VCs can't be valuable.
Why not?
Like, because half of it is I am a VC. And I think I'm valuable, but also like, I do agree they will never know.
You're valuable, Caleb.
You're the one. You're the only one, Caleb.
We think so.
No, like I don't think that they will ever know more about your product than you. in most cases. Like they may know a bit more about the lay of the land if they're like a fintech investor and they've seen like wins, but it's quite rare. There are some and there are also VCs that are domain experts and they just invest in a field. But I do think where they can help is like pattern recognition is a real thing, and seeing what attributes people have or like common pitfalls that people go through. Like the number of things that our investors in our last company were able to sort of shine the light on, super helpful, and like models that I use today. I do think that there's stuff they can help with. It's probably never about your product or your customers though, or like it's rarely about that. It's probably a lot more general. And then like, here's who I can connect you to who could be helpful too.
Right.
So VCs can be really good partners, but it's like there's a lot of cost. Man, I want to keep going, but we have to go to questions. So what questions do folks have for us?
There was a great one at the beginning that I would love for us to chime in on. It's from Monet. Monet says, Dom, this one's for you, baby. How do you attract investment without proof of concept?
You don't. I don't know what you mean by without proof of concept.
You have no proof of concept, no MVP. Dom, how do you attract investment?
Yeah, look, I think that the fantasy that gets told that comes out of Silicon Valley that you can fund an idea, I don't think exists. I don't think it's true. I think that if you really scratch the surface of those stories that you read in the news, those people have been working on that idea or on that industry for years. So it's not just an idea. But if you're coming when you have no proof of concept, just an idea, you probably haven't worked on it long enough to make it anything investable. And you need to do that work first. And this is why I think it's very hard, because I was in that situation. You're working in a job.
Same.
It's very busy and full time. And I didn't have kids at the time. And I knew like I had to get out to get into this world to be able to free myself, to be able to work on ideas. But that's kind of what you got to figure out. You got to find a way to self-bootstrap to get to a point where you've got something. And my advice is always start with problem spaces you know well. I would say steer clear of generic consumer stuff. Competition is too high anyway. Even if you did discover the next mobile app that was going to make a lot of money, the chances of you getting that to market and distributing it ahead of everybody else and make money very low. So focus on niche problem spaces that you know where there are problems, real problems, and just begin with that. And that can often be solved with a PowerPoint or an Excel sheet. Yeah. Or like the things that I'm doing now, I generate ChatGPT, Python that I then deploy into like a serverless app on Amazon, on Azure. And Azure, I've got Azure credits for free and stuff like that. I'm not paying a cent. And okay, I was a software developer many years ago, but this is just about accessible to anybody. Within a couple of days, you could have an app running for no money. And you can give it to somebody and say, what do you think of this? Like, would you use it? And when they don't use it, kill it. It's dead. It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's gonna be attractive. Like, I want it. Give me, solve my problem.
Yeah.
So if you're not solving a problem, you'll learn so quickly.
We spoke about this yesterday. Like, I've bootstrapped businesses by taking customer deposits. So if you've got something that people need and that people are willing to pay for, they will put down a deposit towards a finished product. I mean, there's a whole
even if you have nothing.
Exactly. There's a whole funding in this, right? Crowdfunding is based on this, that people will put down deposits on things that they feel they need.
The money's in your account, then you know it's real.
Then you know.
I'm not.
Then you know you've got something. So, Monet, to answer your question, how do you fund a proof of concept? You don't. You don't.
Need to pay for it.
No, I thought it was without a proof of concept. Let me play devil's advocate here. So there are some instances that I've seen, well, actually like entry level, it was more about like a team, just a general idea, nothing other than like a handful of us, like 2 of us or 3 of us. And that was because, and the founder had not much experience in it, actually a bit of experience, but not a crazy amount in ed tech. It was just off the strength of the founder and what they'd previously done and the fact that they had raised capital before, they'd done companies really well before. I do think you can raise money without a proof of concept, just as a person, like sort of engaging or like going deep into a space. but you have to have an insane track record, and it has to be a nice market. Like, I don't think that's happening in 2024. So
If you have an insane track record, you probably don't need to raise. You're probably raising just because you want to diversify your risk.
Yeah.
So I think when investors see that as well, they're like, okay, look, this guy doesn't need the money. He's got many other things he could be doing. This is a very low risk bet I'm taking. I think that that's still possible, but most people are in the beginning phases. It's their first one. They don't know how to get the money for something. They don't know how to start. They're in this sort of like I've been there, you know. How do I get this thing going without any money? Well, get somebody to pay for it, and that's often where services led growth is an interesting approach, right? You can offer services and then get to the product later. Right. Solve the problem just by your own time. Don't solve it with
Raise's whole business model is right there. It's exactly that's Raise's whole business model.
And I think like there's a lot of agencies that spin out products, or like they have the intention of building a product, but they discover and become domain experts.
Correct.
They spin that up. I want to move to another question. So Tosin asks, I'm curious, how do you bootstrap as a founder, and what's your approach to bootstrapping? I'd love to ask you that, Douglas. What has been your approach? I think you told us a bit about it, but maybe what are some of the things you've done to bootstrap and sustain that?
I mean, I guess two things I would recommend. Try to keep your costs very low. I mean, I guess that advice also applies if you're VC backed, but I mean, when you're VC backed, you have money to spend. But jokes aside, try to keep your costs very low. It really would go a long way. And also try to get as much free stuff as you can, because free stuff as you can, and also just have a team if you can. Just because if you're not alone, or you kind of get to spread responsibilities that typically money would cost, typically would cost money. So that would typically help. So for me, I think one of the best things for me was I think there was maybe a stint in 2018 where I sort of hired a social media manager. I try to keep it very low. Oh, and then one thing I want to say, I think this is, if you're bootstrapped or even not bootstrapped, where you are not paying for something in money, you're paying for it in your time. So very early on, you should try to figure out like which you're comfortable like letting go of. And that's very important for someone that's bootstrapping, because you're trying to be cheap, or you're trying to be affordable, and then you get somebody that is affordable, and then you have to like review or rewrite their work like 500 times. And that just takes out of the time you should do something productive. And it's like you're trying to save money there, but you're really just killing yourself eventually. So it's important to find the balance with those two. I think at some point very early on, I was hiring for like a lot of potential, and I think at some point I realized, whenever I'm hiring for too much potential, I typically pay for it in my time, and I don't want to do that. That's not a good use of my time. So I would prefer to hire somebody for what they have right now, and hopefully their potential in future. That saves a lot of my time right now. It also saves me from a lot of like stress and back and forth going with them, like, hey, you didn't do this doesn't come out the way I wanted it to. So please just give me what you have now, and if you don't have it, you're probably not the hire that I want. Those are things I would recommend if you're bootstrapping.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's something that we talk about a lot, especially like in our management team at Tech Safari. It's like, yeah, we want great talent, and we see a lot of potential in early talent, but we're not at a point where we can spend time to develop them, because we need the thing now. Because like whether we live or die, it depends on whether we get paid, and that means doing the job better. So like I totally feel that. I think that's like actually a really underrated piece of advice that people don't talk about. And then I think that like, I guess if you focus that in a bit more, I think it also means like if you're bootstrapping, you only have the time to focus on what matters. Like you don't really have time to play around or throw money at things. So like if it's not working, like if what you're doing isn't working, you have to move on. You can't really just keep doing it for a year. So that was really cool. Lisa.
There's a question here which I think is very cool. How do you build trust for pre-sale or to take deposit or deposit taking for bootstrapping? So, Dom, like how did you, if you were to go about it, because you know the customer journey, people have to know you, they have to like you, they have to trust you. And that's always the hurdle often when you don't have demonstrable results in an MVP or a proof of concept. How do you think someone like that should go about bridging that trust barrier in order to get someone into a buying stage?
It's
not a hard question at all.
A lot of people won't trust you. You just got to accept that. You're going to get a lot of rejection, a lot of no's, a lot of not interested, don't want to work with you. But some will, and it's probably going to be people you already know or through your network. They already, have some sort of reference point with you. But again, it comes back to the likelihood that you're going to do something in a space you understand well, like you understand the problem space. So I think the temptation is to believe, I work in accounting. Like, how can accounting be exciting? Well, I guarantee you in your accounting world, there's some small, tiny little step that's annoying that you ignore probably, but it's a problem for you. And you actually know quite well, and you could be an expert in that thing, or you've been working for customers and you keep being asked things that they need that your company can't do. Or it's going to come from your interaction with the real world. If you start off with those problems, it's very likely that it's not going to be too difficult for you to present yourself as authoritative, present yourself as knowing how to do it. Even if you haven't built a product at all, people are going to look to you and go and say, well, it's likely that you would know how to do it if I gave you the money. And that's going to be key. If you go really far left field, like you leave your corporate job to go and do the next great consumer app, that's going to be very, very hard because you've got no credibility on which to base it. And I think that is not the place then to start. Like that's also often why second, third, fifth time founders find this easier because they've got the networks, they've been through the accelerators. By the way, I think a quick punt for that is I think accelerators give you that starting network, that starting like, who can I ask this question to get this little bit, very underrated early on by.
If you didn't go to a private school, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't go to a private school. But I think that's, you're going to get your credibility by what you know and knowing your problem well. Not necessarily the tech. It's not going to come, I know how to do AI. I know how to build software. The end customer doesn't really care so much about the how. They care about, do you understand their problem and their issue, whether it's a consumer or a business. But I mean, that's particularly the case in B2B. They know that you're starting with nothing. They know you've got no employees. They know you've got nothing behind you. Doesn't matter. If it's a problem they have and you're credible, they'll give you a shot, especially in South Africa. I think that's the attitude there. It's like, everybody's kind of doing something on the side and making their way. And in South Africa, my experience, or in Africa in general, people will give you a lot more credibility for that. When I worked in Germany, in Europe, not the case. You need to have been that business, been around for 5 to 10 years before people will think of you as knowledgeable. Very, very hard environment to start new things. So I think you've got enough opportunities around you for people who will take the bet, but on things which you credibly have some knowledge. You can talk to the issues with some credibility.
Let me add to that as well with a real example. So like Tech Safari is a year and 2 months old, and like the first people to take a bet on us and like actually fund us were like Raise actually, and we're still here, so thank God. That like one of the first customers that were like, yeah, we want to do this. We want to do an event with you. We want to do like sponsor, put an ad in, and then also Rainier from FTC. Two of the first people, and there were people who kind of knew us, were reading the content and were like, yeah, like, we don't know if this product's real, but like here's a bit of cash to test it out. And we learned so much from like working with both. So
I think the thing with this is that like make it enough of a bite or a hook in terms of pricing that the risk is not too high. I think that's the one thing that's worked for us is if you're launching something into the market and you don't necessarily have years and years of credibility behind you, just drop your pricing so that people can try you out without having to sink a whole lot of cash. And there's a tolerable risk factor in that. You can push your pricing up later on once you've demonstrated that you are credible and that you have a good product, but use pricing as a mechanism by which to get those first customers over the line, demonstrate that you are amazing, and then you can change that. But if there's a risk factor, just make sure that the risk is not too high for them to overcome it, and then identify your first adopters. Like that's why we went with Caleb. I'm a great first adopter. Like I will try something out, even if it's not perfect. I'll try something out and work with the founder or whoever it is to make it better for me. So find your first adopters.
I feel bad for your LinkedIn messages after saying that. Every founder here is going to hit you up.
But I think be honest, right? A lot of founders want to present themselves as something they're not. Don't do that either. Yeah. Like be honest. So like we're trying this out, we're scrappy. Don't try and present yourself as, a global corporate and, nobody's going to believe that. They will trust you also if you're honest. So do make sure you don't over promise and over sort of manufacture your image. Stick to reality.
Yeah. I have a question here. So I reckon we can do maybe 2 more questions and then we'll round out. But I have a great question here for Douglas, and it's from Daniel. How do you balance a high demand job with the work required in the early days? And when do you know when it's time to go full time? You're on mute, Douglas.
I have an answer. When your productivity at your full-time job is so bad, you have to quit. I mean, I feel like so. Actually, neither. It's actually neither. It was my last job in 2020. I mean, in almost all the jobs that I've had, I would say I've always been a good employee, like Stella, always got. And I think in 2020, I was dying. I was literally dying. Like I was trying to meet the demands of dev, because I think we were really taking off at the time and meeting the demands of managing a small team, because I had 2 social media managers at the time. Interestingly, the reason I had 2 is because they were both not that great, but they were supporting each other. But it was also a thing of what I could afford. And eventually I let them go, and then I got somebody else, and that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I think maybe when you want to die would probably be where I would start. But the thing is, I think because I guess the easiest answer I would say will be whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you can take at that particular point in time. I think from 2016 to 2019, a lot of the work that I was doing for Seller was a lot of, maybe I send a couple, and again, we had a small amount of users. So I was speaking to some people on IG, getting customer feedback. Then it was a lot of dev work, and dev work was easy to make work with the current job that I had. I think 2020 was just a lot crazier because we had more users. I think that was one part of the ramp. Then another part was I was also now dealing with people and also just having more day-to-day activities. And so it was very hard just navigating that, as well as the other job that I had, which was killing me. So I think you on your own should be able to figure out what are your responsibilities for the startup that you're working on, and what can you do, and what can you manage, and what can you handle. That's probably just the advice that I have for this.
Maybe just to go a little bit deeper, what indicators did you need from Seller to be yeah, this is the thing, I'm going to go in on this? What kind of deal is that for you?
Sorry, before you start that, Dom's got a dash, guys, because we're out of time for Dom. So can we say goodbye to him, and then Douglas can answer?
Dom, thanks, mate. This is a lot of fun.
It was really nice speaking.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, been great to chat. And if anybody has any more questions around, bootstrapping, happy to assist. Thank you so much.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom. But we'll stick around for a little bit for those who want to stay.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, so I could give it so it was a revenue thing for me, but even the revenue was not very solid. It didn't feel very solid to me at the time, because I think, so I'll just give you an example. I think in the year prior, we probably did 12 million naira in revenue, maybe either 12 or 6, one of them. I think it was 6, because I think the year prior was maybe 3 million, and then in 2019 it was probably 6 million, and in 2020 it was 100 million. So it was quite a big jump. The reason why it didn't feel so great was because maybe like 70% of that came from one customer. 70% of that probably came, 75% of that probably came from one customer. And she kind of had a biannual sale. So it was like from one release that she had. So it didn't feel very concrete, but I think in terms of the users that we had gotten through her, it was like, oh, this could work. And I think for me, it was, at the time, I wanted to raise money, and I knew that, like, if I was going to raise money, nobody will take me seriously if they see that I still have a full-time job, because they'll be like, oh, you haven't even taken the risk of like quitting, like how dare you ask me for money. So I thought I was going to raise money, and that was one of the reasons. But then also the business was doing well, and I almost couldn't make the two work in terms of commitment. And so those were the 3 things that just like pushed me out.
That's so good. Yeah, thank you for that insight. I feel like a lot of Bootstrap founders would find that really valuable. All right, we're gonna ask everyone in the chat to, or everyone viewing, just like to write in one thing that they learned from this session. So you could share one thing or one insight or one gem that you found to be really interesting. That would be great. It's a nice way for us to sort of recap what we learned, and then also kind of relay that back. So just pop it in the chat. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to go through any more questions, but it's a great indicator that we need to do a round 2 on this, because it was a great discussion.
And we're always available. Hit us up on LinkedIn. If your question is burning and you're not going to sleep tonight because you need to ask it, like, hit us up, and any one of us will jump onto LinkedIn and help you out. Douglas is pulling a face.
I mean, you can reach out to them. No, you can also reach out to me. I will answer. I will answer.
Douglas is famous, right, guys? Like, his time is expensive.
It's not. It's really not. But I mean, you can reach out to me. I will. I would actually reply at that.
Same.
Cool, guys. Keep the insights coming, and maybe we can do a quick roundup. Like, what did we think? Was like an interesting takeaway from this.
I have something to say. Okay,
go for it.
No, Lisa, go.
Go, Douglas.
No, Douglas, it's your stage, Douglas.
I have something to say.
Very famous.
And so this is probably my bias, but I do not like the takes for people that talked about like pitching to investors, because I think if you have a track record, yes, you stand a chance, but not a lot of people have a track record when they start. And I think that's a nuance that's very important to address, because, and I think a track record probably is a watered down version of even the concept I'm trying to communicate. What I mean is, there's a position you stand when maybe people know you, or you have some intro to an investor, and then you could be like, oh, hey, this is what I'm building. If you want it, come in or not. There's that even confidence and cockiness. Thanks, Walter. However, it's kind of trickier when you have a really cute idea, you think it's gonna work, and you don't even know anybody. And then you start pitching, and that's when graveling just gets uglier. And that's also just when you don't have actually leverage to talk about things. And I think I'm at a different point. Like, I'm not at this point right now, but I definitely was at this point in 2017, 2018, when even the idea of what we're trying to build didn't make sense to anybody. Digital products didn't look like it was going to work. The market wasn't even fully ready. And I would even agree to that. But at least now I get outreaches from VCs that want to fund, and I'm like, oh, I'm not interested right now. But so I think there is that nuance with people trying to raise money that don't have the connections, that don't know the people, and it's a completely different ball game for them when they get to these tables. And but I think it's something hopefully you guys can talk about next time when it comes to raising money.
Yeah, that is so true, Douglas. Yeah, I think that's very true. Like the idea that not every founder can just come in and say this is what we're doing, you're in or out. It's very, very, very true. I will say that, like, and this is definitely for next time, I will say that, like, I think if you are someone who's serious about becoming a founder, you can't really you can't afford to be dependent on other VCs to sort of like scale or build your idea. Like you kind of need to think with that in mind, right? That money's not coming. I think a lot of founders get stung because they expect it. And that's the same mindset I think that gives other people to say like, or other founders say like, hey, I don't need this, or like, I don't actually care. I think that's one thing. And then maybe just getting used to the power dynamic. I remember the first time I was shitting myself and I was like, thank God, like AJ can pitch really well. I'm just like nervous. I can't even like say one sentence introducing myself. And today in that situation, it would be really different, but that took like time learning the game a bit. So I think it takes time to be great at being a founder. It's one of the hardest jobs ever. And like once you get it, you get it. And I'm sure like dynamics are pretty different for you now.
Absolutely. No, it's very different. I think if you are going to go and raise cash, if you are going to go and take cash from VCs, come and speak to Raise. So like get a valuation, right? I know. Get a valuation done effectively. Make sure your cap table's in order. Like set yourself up for the best possible experience that you can have. Because a lot of what Dom and Douglas are talking about, these bad VC experiences come from the fact that you don't go into it with best prep in mind. So ensure that your house is in order, ensure your cap table's in order, make sure that your pitch deck and your financial model are all speaking the right language to be able to attract an investor that is aligned with your purpose of your business. And you'll have a much better experience and you'll be on the other side of this discussion. And that's what Raise is there to do. It's there to be able to enable founders to have a good VC experience.
So interestingly, sorry, just I feel like you want to cut off. So interestingly, I was listening to your description of Raise at the beginning of the webinar, and the last thing you just said now, and I think I like the last thing you just I feel like the last thing you just said now, which is like, oh, if you're trying to raise money, come to us and we'll help you. I kind of like this pitch better.
Okay, good. I'll stick with it.
Like it's so much better. Like now I understand, because I was a part of me wondered like, what does this follow? But like I really like the pitch you just gave now.
Oh, good. I'm gonna stick with that. Thanks.
That's awesome.
Woo! Just refine my pitch. Nice. Thank you, team.
Let me read out some of these insights and then we'll call it a day. But we got that from someone saying, one thing that stood out for me was the people support people they know. Someone else said, I like the track record angle. It's like applying for your first job and get, sorry, not enough experience. And you wonder, how am I going to get experience? Cool. Money is a microwave. It can help one kill a bad idea early or accelerate growth of a good idea. Nice one. A track record and a level of confidence in the idea.
Read the next one too.
Okay. Raise is the best platform for any founder seeking to raise. Nice. The best insight was to get the stories from Silicon Valley that got investments on an idea. All startups got traction to some extent and showed real solution for real world problems. So bootstrapping till you get the idea right and show how to do it. Getting the investment will come easier is a simple takeaway. That I think is the summary of the whole thing.
Nice, Samuel. You can do our next one. Thanks, team. That was fun.
Thank you so much. Douglas, thank you so much. This is fantastic. Having your insights was great. Thank you for being on here.
Appreciate it. That's amazing. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you very much. Had a really great time. Thanks for inviting me. You have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks. And Lisa will be back. To everyone watching, we'll be back soon with another one of these.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.